Welcome. My name is Roberto Velasquez, and I'm the Executive Director of Southern Caregiver Resource Center. I'm really excited because today we are hosting our first podcast in the history of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, and we'll refer to our agency as SCRC for short, trying to get people to recognize SCRC as the main name here. And with us today on our first podcast, we have Marta Ranon, who is our Director of Government and Community Affairs. And we have Tariel Goldstein, who is a board member of SCRC and also has been a caregiver and has been in the caregiver industry for quite some time. I won't say how many years. She's telling me not to say how many years she's been in the industry, in case you guys see her out there. But this is exciting. As an agency, we've turned 30 years in January, providing care and support services for families that are dealing with Alzheimer's disease, other related disorders like Parkinson's and TBIs and Huntington's disease and Lewy body, as well as caring for families who are caring for frail older adults. And, one of the really important things about our agency is we have such high-level clinicians that really work with our families and our education. We're all professional staffed. We have an education department that's run by Marta, and we have a fantastic board, and again, Tariel is part of that board, so that we have a lot of advocates out in the community that are really trying to create awareness about SCRC services and connect families. So I wanted to, before I can go on and on and on, and we'll come back to me later, but I wanted to ask Marta to share a little bit of her background story, if she wouldn't mind, how she came to SCRC.
Absolutely, Roberto. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do so. I came to SCRC when I was a caregiver, and I was caring for my great aunt, and I say great aunt because she was great, but really because she was my grandmother's sister. So if you think about that, it's so far removed, and I found myself caring for her, and I thought I had it under control. I mean, I thought I could just go online and search for a website or pick up a brochure and make a call, but I really wasn't prepared for that emotional roller coaster that I was about to be on, and it became very difficult. I was working full-time. I was pregnant with my first child. Forget the dog and the cat in the house.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I found myself very stressed, feeling very overwhelmed. And I just thought I needed to go somewhere for assistance. And that's how I came to SCRC. And it was really wonderful. It was really my lifeline. It became my network of care. So many times we figure out what we need to do when we're in it, not necessarily knowing ahead of time. So that was my experience.
Extended family, maybe?
You became my extended family without much more drama. And so it was really nice to be able to reach out to SCRC and get the assistance that I needed. It was still difficult because taking care of someone who had dementia and was elderly and frail, she was 98 when I was caring for her. She lived with me, and it was still a struggle, but it was better knowing that I could talk to someone, that I could get some assistance. And
I know it's always kind of a challenge because I know a lot of family members, we have large families, or maybe some of us have brothers and sisters that are close by, but not everybody helps. And I always know that is a big stressor. And I hear that in support groups all the time.
Absolutely.
How do I get my family member to help?
Yes.
Or I'm so mad at them because they don't help.
And it was interesting because I found myself in such a unique position. We come from a large family, and sometimes there's this misconception that big families just kind of stick together and help each other out. But now that I'm doing this work, now that I am an employee and part of the SCRC family, I find myself hearing this from other caregivers who say, now I am in this situation and I feel all alone, even if we are coming from a big family. So I can relate to that. And what I find myself telling family members is that it doesn't have to be your blood relative. It could be your colleague. It could be an organization such as SCRC. It could be a coworker. It could be a friend, a neighbor. It doesn't necessarily have to be your family member. And that's what I learned when I was utilizing the services, the wonderful services that I used from SCRC to help care for my aunt.
Absolutely, and I don't know if our audience knows, but the month of November is National Caregivers Awareness Month, and when Martha talks about caregivers and extended family and caregivers, I mean, in the United States, there's over 44 million caregivers. So this is not an isolated type of situation. Caregiving's been going on for years and years and years. The challenge now has become that people move away from home. Family dynamics change. People might not be in the same town anymore, and of course, our loved ones are living older, getting older, living longer. Developing chronic conditions that they need assistance with, and it's a frightening situation for them as well, as they might be beginning to show signs of memory loss, maybe confusion, maybe they're still driving and you're freaked out that they shouldn't be that they're gonna crash. I know Tariel, as I mentioned, one of our board members, has also had experience as a caregiver.
Yeah, well, a little bit about me. I've always had an affinity toward older adults, the aging population. So I knew early on in my career, and even college, that I wanted to be a social worker, and that's sort of how I got involved. Anything with advocacy, I'm all about, which essentially led me to Southern Caregiver Resource Center about 10 years ago. I felt what they did to help the community and the population of family caregivers was just phenomenal, and the level of services, bar none, best that I've ever seen or experienced. As far as me and being a caregiver, my story is a little different than Martha's. My mom was 64 years old, lived cross country, and all of a sudden she had a drastic change in condition. Now, having been in the industry and worked in skilled nursing and, care companies where we provide care, I was now that family member and so far from her. And my mom was always just stubborn. She never really wanted me around. She fought me on it. She always said, if I get sick, just lock me up in a nursing home, throw away the key, forget about me.
A lot of family members say that. A lot of relatives say that. Don't bother with me.
Yeah.
My dad was the same way. No, don't worry about me. You guys worry about your mom, not me.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I had just started a new job, and all of a sudden, I'm thrust into this, doing caregiving from 3,000 miles away. And again, somebody in the industry, I felt so helpless. I felt that my back was to the wall, or the healthcare providers just didn't care enough to see my mom as a person rather than a patient. So to watch her, basically deteriorate rapidly was so difficult, and just navigating the system was so hard for me.
And the distance also, she was in the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
Right. We're in New York?
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yep. And
So you had to also learn what was available out there.
Well, surprisingly, here's what's interesting is that I worked on the East Coast and in skilled nursing facilities, so I had contacts. But even with the contacts and even with the care providers, it was mind-boggling how she slipped through the cracks and how nobody really cared. And I was frustrated, all of a sudden, I want to be with my mom to be with my mom, as a daughter. And I'm getting emotional. But I was stripped of that. I feel like I was completely stripped of that. And I had to be her care manager. And, I'm flying home, and rather than sitting there and reminiscing with her or just having a good time or going through, we never went through the jewelry that we wanted to talk about. We didn't have time because she left. She left us too soon. So, yeah, it's really difficult. And I wish I had somebody from a professional setting to support me and help me with that journey. It would have made a huge difference. I did it on my own. I was single, and again, I was starting a new job. It was so stressful. I went home 4 times in under a year. And so to have an organization like SCRC, if I had something like that on the East Coast, it would have made all the difference in the world. We couldn't even get my mom on hospice. I mean, I was fighting with providers, and they're telling me, well, we don't do palliative care, or she doesn't have a diagnosis for hospice. My mom had lost over 30 pounds and had rapid weight loss and pain that was, so crippling for her. And I couldn't even get her on hospice, so I would get the aftercare and the bereavement support. So I felt cheated. And, and trying to be an advocate for your own loved one is just, it's not easy, and you need all the help and support you can get. So
watching you just talk, and thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know it's not an easy thing to share, because it is an emotional roller coaster. And I think for a lot of us who have been in that situation, it's very difficult to deal with your own emotions and then be super strong so that you can deal with what's happening. And then on top of that, deal with the condition that your loved one is going through. And I find that now in this position, doing a lot of the educational classes and talking to caregivers everywhere, that when especially you have this dynamic where the adult child becomes the caregiver, i.e. sometimes the parent, it can be very, very difficult, because now you're having to take control. And you talked about even fighting. I remember my brother, who was really my support from afar. He lived outside of the state.
I remember.
And he was the person that I told him, I said, well, since you are far away and not really physically here to help me, your job is going to be to let me call you and vent and cry and yell and just bounce things off of you. And he was very willing to do that. And I remember one time he said, it sounds like you're always fighting. You're always fighting. Not so much, with him, but just fighting with the system, the process, becoming an advocate, trying to advocate for my aunt who had no voice, who had dementia, who really obviously was not going to fight for herself. Had I not stepped in, who was she going to talk to help her? And so I completely understand how difficult it is, even if we're lucky enough that we live in a county that has a lot of resources, and our organization being so robust in the free services that we offer. If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's what I really enjoy this opportunity, because I'm hoping that our podcast here really starts to stimulate a lot of conversations about caregiving issues, needs that families have. Hope people connect to SCRC, because all our services are free. For the audience out there, we're the #1 contractor for the County of San Diego for Family Caregiver Support Program and for Family Caregiver Support Program for older adults with Alzheimer's and related dementias. So we also have the big contracts for the respite services. So we're able to help more families, especially this new year with the new contracts, who are in need of a break from caregiving. We've with the new contracts, we have more money now in the respite, I would say kitty, if you will, or the bank, but the respite bank, than we've had since 2008. So we really want families to reach out and get connected to our services, because there's a lot of support for families, and nobody should have to deal with all of this by themselves.
And one of the things that is interesting that I have found as a caregiver, and maybe you can relate to this too, is that sometimes caregivers feel really guilty taking time for themselves.
Every support group I've ever attended, that's one of the themes, is the guilt of leaving the family member alone, even if it's just for a little while.
That was the opposite of me. I felt guilty for not being there. I mean, that's the reverse. But
because you were the long distance caregiver. The other the ones in the support group were like the ones connected.
And like
mostly.
my stepfather, for example, literally his life revolved around her. Going home for lunch because she couldn't toilet herself. Just the role he took on was so taxing on him. He lost weight. I was worried about his health because oftentimes the caregiver stops, going to their doctor's appointments, and that doesn't become a priority anymore because you're kind of just in this bubble.
Yeah.
And, I've worked with many, many families over the years, and I've witnessed it in homes of caregivers and what their routine is. And for me, it was just exhausting. If I'd spent a couple hours in a home and saw what that caregiver went through, it was mind-boggling. So I think, just sometimes just being in, like I said, your life revolves around that person and taking time for yourself, which is why the respite program at Southern Caregiver is so beneficial, because you can't get free care. And through Southern Caregiver, you have this opportunity to work with getting respite care, whether that's being in home, having a provider come into the house, or maybe having your loved one go to an assisted living.
Or adult daycare program.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the resources are amazing. And so when you have that breakdown, or when you need some time to yourself, you have that kind of assurance that it's okay.
What I think it's great too, one of the things, and I don't know if people know this about our services, but a lot of our educational classes really try to incorporate the self-care.
Can I just say that Martha has a large groupie of family caregivers that follow her around the county, which is really exciting and interesting, because every time I go in, Martha goes, yeah, these are my groupies. Some of them are here. There.
Are you in a band that I don't know about?
Yes, it's the caregiver band.
The caregiver band.
I do stand up. It's really great to even see those group of people evolve from first coming into my class, being very frazzled and talking to me about being overwhelmed and stressed, and then seeing them a couple of times. And in every single one of my classes, I incorporate self-care, taking time for yourself, that coveted me time. Don't feel guilty. You can need a break too. You don't want to feel sick or become sick because you're ignoring your care. And so it's really wonderful to see these caregivers or these participants later on. Hey, I did what you said. I'm walking now, or I'm doing yoga, or whatever it is that they're doing.
Right.
It's
Makes
really
a big
great
difference.
To see.
And you know what I find interesting too, from my experience working in the industry for so long, and I will say it's 17 years this month.
The truth comes out.
I started when I was 10. But what I've seen too
Me too.
is you can see families develop relationships with one another through the process of having kind of that outreach and support. They then realize, I'm not alone.
You don't have to do it alone. That's
and
the
they
wonderful
develop
part,
friendships, and they support each other, and they go to coffee, and they go out, and they become friends.
I think one of the things that's really important for family caregivers is that meeting, that first initial assessment with that professional care manager, which we call family consultants at SCRC. All of a sudden, they're being interviewed about their needs as caregivers. And as you were talking about, you found yourself being that care manager across, the country. And it was so challenging for you because you were also having to come up with all the ideas and having to do all the research and having to do everything in order to try to put things in place. The family consultants here help families do that, because we know that when they come to us, the caregiving responsibility is already overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't even think past that minute.
No.
And Martha looks at me because she's saying that, she's always telling me, Roberta, we got way too much to do.
Squeeze 3 minutes into one.
Right,
No,
right.
I mean, I know, like, the last time I flew home before my mom passed, I literally had an agenda. I mean, literally.
Oh, yeah.
There was an agenda, and it wasn't each day. It was each hour,
Right.
scheduling appointments and researching and, contacting doctors and emailing doctors. I mean, it's a full-time job.
Absolutely. And this is why I'm saying, for families that get connect to SCRC, they get connected to a family consultant who's a master's level or a clinical licensed social worker who really has an enormous amount of experience and expertise in caregiver issues. And they help them prioritize. They help them understand feelings. They develop a care plan with them.
What I like is that they are that extension, that they walk with you through that journey so that you don't have to do it alone. And to me, that emotional aspect is much, to me, it was just much more important before I could even understand, okay, where do I go for this doctor? Who do I need to talk to? I just needed that validation, that support, somebody to hear me, and that's what they do, and I really appreciated having them so that I can call on
Absolutely.
them whenever I need it.
The clinicians are just exceptionally trained. They have compassion. Again, I've met many of them over the years, and we still have a lot of the same folks around here, which is great with retention. But just being able to talk to them and know that they get it and they give you the window to express yourself, and just top notch. I mean, I've always been blown away by how many clinicians Southern Caregiver has.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are waiting for your call.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that is really powerful too, and Martha talked about guilt and emotions and what people go through. And one of our programs that's very powerful is our counseling program. We've had families that go in there and they're so depressed, and they don't even realize how depressed they are. But they're very depressed. They're very sad. They have a lot of anxiety. They have anger and guilt, and they work with one of the counselors, which are licensed clinical social workers, and they help them understand their feelings. They teach them. They give them exercises because it's based on cognitive behavioral theory. So they keep them engaged in exercises that help change behaviors as well as thought processes. And I mean, they'll go in there and they're really depressed. And this after the 6th session, which is a 6-session program, they're better. They understand how to better cope with what's coming their way, and even have mechanisms, skills. They've developed coping skills to learn how to address those emotions and feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also think it's important too that these clinicians actually are connecting your clients to resources in the community. That's huge. Just to have somebody and talk to and say, my mom, I'm having issues with this doctor. Do you know, or can you recommend, or give a suggestion, or point me in the right direction?
Right.
I mean, a lot of people don't understand the complexities of the medical system. So having someone be able to kind of walk you through it is huge.
Right. Thank you for saying that. I mean, and we know it's all true. As I was mentioning, SCRC, we've turned 30 years old as an agency, and boy, have we grown. I mean, we started out in 1987 with 3 staff members serving 150 people annually, and now we have 36 staff members who are serving over 80,000 families. And Martha actually has the bulk of that because last year, actually, we exceeded that amount. I always give that number, but last year, through Martha's Education and Outreach Department, by themselves, they reached over 90,000 people through education, through outreach. And it's one of the things that I'm very proud about the agency, SCRC, is that we go out of our way to try to find those most vulnerable families, socially, economically disadvantaged families, because we want to connect them to those services and make sure that they're aware that they're free. They don't have to pay for them. So get connected, connect to the services. I know we have a lot of exciting things to come in the near future, and I'm really excited as the executive director to kind of be leading the charge on this, but I also have some great people working with me. Martha is leading the campaign we're kind of doing a whole new campaign through social media. This is part of it, trying to connect with the working family, which we is coined as the sandwich generation. Did you want to share anything about that, Martha?
Absolutely. And I think we fall into those categories.
Wait, I have 3 dogs, no kids, though.
You're a mom to your dogs, right?
Yes.
And sometimes, that has to be just as important because they depend on you. You're their caregiver.
This is true. And when Tariel had to leave, at moment's notice, fortunately, she had a wonderful roommate and a wonderful best friend who took in the dogs and cared for them. So
absolutely, and we understand. Yes, it's really exciting to be at this point of the organization. There are so many, like Roberto said, working caregivers, and many times don't find the time to maybe even come to our classes. So the great and exciting things that we are doing here is we're bringing our services to them. We are actually in the process of creating some videos, 1-minute videos on caregiving tips.
Weekly 1 minute. video.
Weekly 1
And they're
minute.
bilingual.
That's
well, with
right.
subtitles, but that means they're bilingual,
English
right?
and English and Spanish, yes. And the idea is that if you don't have time, but you have at least a minute, you can download it, you can watch it during your lunch break, at home, wherever you are, through your phone or whatever device. We're also doing some live streaming of our classes.
Which has been extremely successful, by the way. I really like this because, in a traditional classroom setting, people come, they sit down, and it's very interactive and so forth. But you might get 6, maybe 12 people. If it's a bigger conference, you might get 50. Martha did one the other day, and I don't know, would we have 20 people in the room? But 400 people logged on to see it. So imagine that's the new reach.
Yes.
And it's super easy. I mean, while I was waiting to join the podcast, I was in Roberto's office actually watching Martha's video clips, and you can easily access it on the website. So it's something where maybe, you're doing your hair and makeup and you just throw it on. I mean,
Absolutely.
you could just listen to it and get some really useful information.
And that's the idea.
scrc.care, scrc.care. I'm putting a plug here.
Plug
for us.
away, Roberto.
And actually, and I think what's really exciting about that is we're really bringing SERC to the digital age, going green with our newsletter, really connecting people digitally, and giving them more options, because we do recognize that maybe we have long distance caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we have caregivers who are traveling, so they're not going to come to my class. But hey, they can check out the website. They can see what else is coming up, and they can do it from a distance.
And that's exciting because our generation is definitely digitally focused. I mean, we're always looking at our phones or iPads or whatever. And
the demographics are changing. I mean, I was just saying the other night to a group of people at our 30th anniversary party that a quarter of caregivers are now millennials.
yes, you did say that.
And that's amazing to me. And it was like a realization of, they're not going to come and sit down at an educational workshop, but they might log on after work or in their downtime and click on our website at scrc.care and go look at those videos and then connect and get some education, and then maybe connect for the family consultation services.
It's a soft introduction. It's a soft introduction where it's not like you feel like, oh God, compelled to talk to somebody, but it's a good way to, show what you are capable of doing, and the services are there.
Well, and the other thing is, the other thing that we want to do is we want to do more work with businesses, local businesses. Martha, we're planning to hopefully do some lunch and learns, and we can take 15 minutes out of a business's time and go to where the family caregivers are at.
And we've actually done a couple of them, and they have been very successful, because since people don't have time to go to some of my classes, we come to them, and we do it in a setting that's very informal. They can bring their lunch, and we talk about a certain topic that of their interest. And what's great is that sometimes they bring a coworker. Maybe they didn't know that colleague was also a caregiver. So now they've increased their network at work, and so now they can go to someone at work and say, hey, this is my situation. How can you help, or how can I help? And it's really great if we can have more opportunities to do that, to come to businesses and offer these services.
Kind of unmasking what's out there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you start talking to coworkers, peers, friends, I can guarantee you that they know someone in a situation.
Oh, yeah. Every time we were addressing an audience, you ask how many people are caregivers or work caregivers or know somebody who's a caregiver. I don't think there's one hand that doesn't go up,
Yeah, because you turn to your friends, you turn to your peers, and, and then in return, you've gone through it, so you can help them at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which is kind of like you kind of have your SCRC lifers that, receive the services, but then stay connected to the agency because you've made such a positive impact in their life.
And actually, I've seen a couple of caregivers in my classes who said, you helped me a long time ago when I was caring for my mother. And now I'm here again because you did such a great job. You were so helpful. You helped me through my most difficult times. And now I'm a caregiver again. So I kind of want to be reconnected to you. What else can I take from you so I can use in my caregiving role once again?
That says a lot about you and how you touch that person's life.
Excuse me, I'm the one that's putting together this fantastic professional team at SCRC, so thank you.
I cannot disagree with you on that one.
So,
Not to brag.
so just to wrap up, I hope this was a nice intro to our new monthly podcast that we're going to be sending out every month. This is exciting. We'll have different guest speakers joining us, talk about caregiver issues. Again, stimulating conversation is our goal, connecting people to our services. And if anybody wants to help support our agency with a donation, you can also do that.
Absolutely.
We are a nonprofit 501c3, and your support is very helpful to us.
And all of our services are free.
And that's why they're free, because we have support from the community, and it's all our donors and business partners and sponsors and year-round corporate partners that help us provide those services for free. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Marta for taking the time. I know you don't have
Absolutely.
time. This is your third minute in this 1 minute. And Tariel for staying. And joining us for this first podcast, and
for sharing such a wonderful story.
Oh
as a
God, I know. I got
caregiver.
all emotional.
That's
I like
okay.
shake, like I have convulsions sometimes when I talk about it. She was my best friend. So yeah.
So join us, and again, thank you again, Tariel, Marta, and I also want to thank Finer City Entertainment, who's helping putting this together for us and pushing it out there. But visit us at scrc.care or call us at 858-268-4432. Get connected right now. You don't have to do this alone.
And remember, we are here to care
For those who care for others. That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you.